the performance today. Those shoes were killing me. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't hit anybody.
I have to just say, I'm really impressed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'm Jill Lawrence, and what I learned in this performance is that I can't look at my mother without crying. And yeah, so that's my hour-long Jackie Kennedy presentation. What questions do you have for me today? Because there's an awful lot of things, and that's the tricky thing with talking about her personal life. There's an awful lot of things that Jackie simply would not have talked about, ever. And I probably revealed more in my presentation than she ever would have, but I didn't want to talk about shoes for an hour. So what questions do you have for me? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that one of the attractions to Jack, the president, was her father, Jack? They were very similar men.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. She hero worshipped her father, and he was such a ladies' man. I mean, it's rumored that at his funeral, all these little old ladies were lined up in the back with the veils, weeping and weeping and weeping, and they thought they might have been former lovers of his. But he was notorious. In fact, even Cole Porter was said to have a crush on him. So, yes, I think he reminded her of his father. They were charismatic, they were dynamic, they were vital, they were fun.
Ladies?
Exactly. Exactly. So yes, I definitely think there was an attraction there because of that. Yes, in the back.
Have you had the opportunity to meet any of the Kennedys?
I have not. I have not. I would love to, I think. I don't know if they would say, oh, that's just spot on, or oh God, no, that's totally off. So it's, yes.
How old was Jackie when she passed, and was she fairly reclusive at the end of her life?
She was lucid till the very end. She was surrounded by her books and her family, the people she loved.
Reclusive.
Oh, reclusive.
Yeah.
She actually started working as an editor and a book publisher, and she really enjoyed that. That gave her new life, and she enjoyed the companionship of Maurice Templesman, and I think that was the true second love of her life. They adored each other, and finally she got a man who wouldn't cheat on her. Oh my goodness, don't get me started about Ari and Maria Callas. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. So she died when she was 64 of Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yes, too young, way too young. And that was in 1994. You have a question, or you're just scratching, George?
No.
Okay. Yes.
Where did you get your information that we've not heard of before?
Oh my goodness. I have a stack of books about this high, so lots and lots of biographies. Every documentary I can think of. I like to look at the more recently published books than, say, the Kitty Kelly versions, because a lot of her book is, there's a lot of rumor and hearsay, and it can't be substantiated, and it's really written for sensation. So some of the newer biographies are more accurate and more thorough, and they read like cheap fiction. They're so entertaining, the scandals, the affairs, who's not talking to who. Jackie didn't leave Lee any money in her will, her sister. She could have set her up for life, but she didn't. And she also, of course, married Aristotle Onassis, who had also dated Lee earlier. So Ari had been around, sniffing around the Kennedys for quite a while. Yes, in the back.
I, and I'm sure many people here, saw the live White House tour.
Oh, yeah.
Does that exist anywhere online now? Do you know?
Oh, yes. I've watched the whole thing. I think you can find it on YouTube, actually. It's so funny, the cameraman kept saying, she's got to speak up, she's got to speak up. And Jackie kept saying, but I am speaking up. So that was That was something that happened. Everyone was very surprised by how knowledgeable she was. I didn't really get to go into it in this program, but I do an entire other hour-long program on the White House Restoration Project, and she knew the history of every piece, every antique. It was chaos in the White House. People just took whatever they wanted when they left office. There was no catalog of the objects of art or the antiques. She found the resolution desk in the basement under a layer of paint and had that brought up and restored. There was a marble bust of George Washington in the men's bathroom. So, it was ridiculous. Yes?
There was a chair, right, that she wanted at Edith Wilson's that was James Monroe or James Madison that she wanted that she never received, and she was very upset about that.
Yes, yes. It didn't really do to cross Jackie. She was charming, but she always got what she wanted. Yes, I think that was James Monroe.
Oh, I had a question. With her stepfather, did he bring children into the relationship? And then her
He
mother
did.
had additional children with him that would have been step-siblings?
Right, she had two step-siblings, Janet and then the little boy, whose name I totally know. She was particularly close with Janet Jr. Is it Tom? Let's just say Tom. No, she was particularly close with Janet Jr. and she took her shopping for her first training bra. One of the stories that I just love is of Jackie Kennedy stepping into the bathtub fully dressed to show her stepsister how to use a douche. Now, can you imagine baby Eisenhower doing that? You don't want to imagine that? I don't think any of us do. But do you have any other questions? I feel like I left so much out. Oh. It's true about John Kennedy. Wow, the womanizing. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. I knew that there were other women with Jack Kennedy, but before I started researching, I had no idea how many of them there were. He was a serial philanderer. In fact, he used to say that, pardon my language, this is the president's language, not mine. He said if he didn't get laid every 3 days, he'd get a headache. Right, and he never had headaches. Very clever, Neil. That's my dad. He wanted me to be a lawyer. Working on it. Anyway, right, so when I saw the list of names, I didn't bother to memorize them, there were too many. But there was Marlene Dietrich, there was Jean Tierney, there was Marilyn Monroe, yeah, all that happened. But it was secretaries, it was interns, it was your wife, your wife, your wife, your wife, your wife, your wife, your wife. And nobody was sacred, nobody was off limits, and he even had an apartment that he rented that was a special love nest while he was married to Jackie. It didn't matter if she was pregnant or recovering from childbirth, he simply never slowed down, and his father was even worse. It's really shocking, and people always say, well, did she know? Did she know? She knew. She knew. Jackie was inexperienced but not stupid, but I don't think she knew the full scope of the infidelities. And after he wasn't around when Arabella was born, they couldn't even contact him. First of all, she didn't want him to go because she was in her 8th month of pregnancy, and she didn't think it was a good idea. She knew there would be girls on the boat, but he went anyway. And then they couldn't contact him, and she lost the baby. And this always struck me as particularly callous. When he heard the news, he said, well, we might as well finish our trip because there's nothing I can do anyway. And Bobby and some of his friends said, you better get your butt back or you're never going to be president. She'll divorce you. So it's been interesting as an actress. I've really struggled with finding the love for Jack Kennedy. Because a lot of women in here, I'm sure, would not put up with any kind of that behavior. I absolutely would not. Get a shovel and dig a hole in the backyard. So it's been hard for me to find her love and adoration for him, for a man that I personally would never attach myself to for just that reason, the lack of respect. But I do believe he truly loved her. It was just, this was just something separate. This is just what men did. Had nothing to do with me and Jackie and the family. That's something else. Why would you be upset? So I think there was a lot of that going on. Yes?
Wasn't she paid money by the elder Kennedy not to divorce?
That's a rumor. It was rumored that he paid her $1 million to stay with him. She actually called him up and said, well, why $1 million? Why not 10 million? And they had a laugh about that, but that's never been substantiated. She denied that. I think she would have gone for more than $1 million too. It was Jackie. And a lot of people took digs at her mother and at her later when she married Onassis for being gold diggers, but that was the way they were raised. That was your power as a woman. You're not going to go out there and be president yourself. You're not going to be a brain surgeon. You're going to marry money. That is your job, your responsibility. You are raised and groomed for that. And she played her part beautifully. So I don't think we can judge her with a modern eye. Also, when she committed herself to Jack and the family, she threw herself into it. She committed herself fully. Jack he owned 4 suits. He was always leaving them behind in hotels. He used to go to work wearing 1 brown shoe and 1 black one. He never ate a proper meal. Jackie stopped all that. She made sure he ate 3 proper meals a day. She made sure his suits fit. She made sure he was wearing the right shoes. She taught him how to speak and orate, because she had that training in her own high school, and she was a much better speaker than he was initially. Yes?
What, did you happen to catch the Crown, the story of Elizabeth?
Oh, yes.
And when the Kennedys were there? Now, I didn't know there was such a drug usage there for him.
There was this doctor,
Yeah.
Dr. Max. Dr. Max used to inject the president and the first lady with feel-good concoctions. And they mostly contained amphetamines, but also just a lot of things that, I don't know where they found this guy, but he would see 30 patients a day. He was always covered in blood stains. He had black fingers from the chemicals he was mixing. I wouldn't have let this man touch me, but he used to inject them with these mystery concoctions that gave them a lot of pep. And that's how they got through the inaugural balls and all the dinners and things, and they were exhausted to the point of collapse. But this is what kept them going. And there were things in there like placenta or just all kinds of horrible things they didn't really know about. I personally wouldn't have let him touch me, but yeah, they did use a lot of...
Oh, and Jackie too?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It takes a lot of stamina to be always on in front of so many cheering crowds. I mean, just cheering and waving for hours, and the travel and the flights and the time changes. But they always had to be fresh and pretty and ready to go and thrilled to see everybody, and it's exhausting. So that's one of their little secrets. What else did I want to say about that? Oh, yes, on the episode of The Crown, I love that show. They have one episode where Jackie and Jack come and meet Queen Elizabeth II, and then later on in the episode, Jackie is high as a kite on one of Dr. Max's injections and says some very indiscreet things about Queen Elizabeth II, and then they get back to her. Oh, well, Hollywood has to have its little tweak on things. It's true they had dinner together. It's true that Jackie was not particularly impressed with Buckingham Palace. And she wasn't particularly impressed with the Queen's gown, and frankly, I wasn't either. Next to Jackie, who could stand next to Jackie? Who could shine next to her? And the Queen was a pleasant-looking woman. I think Jackie thought her dress was somewhat dowdy. So, but she didn't make the remarks in The Crown. It wasn't that big of a deal, and I don't know that she ever went back and apologized. Yes?
Do you know anything about her relationship with Ethel Kennedy?
Oh, Ethel. Well, of course, Jackie and Bobby were really very close. She depended on him, particularly after Dallas. I remember reading that he came running up after the assassination, after they'd flown back with the body. He came running up, the plane and went right by the new president, Lyndon Johnson, didn't even acknowledge him and said, "Where's Jackie? I have to get to Jackie." And Johnson was mad about that for years. He thought it was a horrible breach of protocol and etiquette, and he and Bobby Kennedy hated each other. He used to call Bobby Kennedy that little shit. Pardon my language, but it's Lyndon's language, not mine. Anyway, sorry, what was your question? I lost it.
Where's the closeness between Bobby and
Oh, yes, Ethel. Right, so Bobby and Jackie were very, very close, and I think Ethel really resented it. Once Jackie said to her, "Oh, won't it be wonderful when we get back in the White House again?" And Ethel looked at her and said, "What do you mean, we?" And I forgot to mention this when I was in character, but I still say it so it still counts. The Kennedy girls, oh my goodness, they were a rough and tumble bunch. And Jackie, or Jacqueline, she liked to be called Jacqueline. And Ethel Kennedy used to say under her breath, "Rhymes with queen." So they were a very rough and tumble athletic family, tons of energy. And Jackie was very refined, Jackie was very sophisticated, Jackie did not want to play touch football all day long. In fact, they had her play a game and she broke her foot. She said, "My God, these girls are going to kill me before I ever get to marry him." She used to call them the rah-rah girls. And they used to call her the Deb, short for the debutante. So they weren't terribly impressed with her, and I think there was pressure with her to have a healthy baby, and of course she had Arabella, and she also had a miscarriage. So all the Kennedy women were looking askance at her because she couldn't produce healthy babies. They thought she was too high-born and nervous. It's always the woman's fault. Yes?
What are your thoughts on Marilyn Monroe's death, and do you think Bobby and Jackie were involved in that?
I don't think Jackie had a thing to do with it. I don't think she shed many tears.
No, Jack Kennedy.
Oh, Jack
and Bobby
Kennedy.
Had something, did they orchestrate her death?
I don't think so. There's never been any solid connection to a murder plot. And people talk. That's what I've learned. People can't keep their mouths shut no matter what they've done. They have to tell someone about it, and then they tell someone else, and the next thing you know, it's on the front page of the papers. I've never found any substantial proof that they had anything to do with Marilyn's death. I don't think it's a big leap that she took too many pills one night. She was chronically unhappy and very upset at aging and at being left by. She chased after Jack Kennedy and had dreams about being the next First Lady. And apparently she called and told Jackie about it. And Jackie said, "Well, I'll tell you, Marilyn. You can come to the White House and be the First Lady, and you'll have Jack, and you'll have all the problems. Good luck." So that was Jackie's response. But I can't see it. I think it would be too risky. Yes?
Is it true, Jill, that Jackie planted the idea of Camelot?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Jackie was a master of publicity, always has been. The one example is that final salute that John Jr. gives his father's coffin, that tiny little salute and the flag. That was Jackie's idea, and of course it just rips your heart out right by the roots to see that. So she orchestrated that. The idea of Camelot, and I don't think we should judge her too harshly with this, because she was out of her that she suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Of course, there was no name for it back then, but she suffered flashbacks. She suffered nightmares. She startled not obsessively, but she startled excessively at noises. If there was a gunshot in a play or the slamming of a car door, she'd come unglued. So I don't think we should judge her too harshly for trying to paint Jack's legacy in a certain light. And there are a lot of things about Jack Kennedy that are sort of mythical. He was our first modern president. He was our first president that looked like a movie star. He had such energy and vitality, and he inspired so many people to serve their country and be more than what they are. He was a war hero, so those mythic elements are not inappropriate for Jack. He mythically had sex with so many women. But, so I don't think I think she can be forgiven for that, but she definitely planted the Camelot idea. And no, he didn't listen to the record every night before bedtime. Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for one brief shining moment. No, he didn't do that. And one of his friends said he would have uttered a profane statement if he had ever heard that, because he didn't really care for musical theater or the arts like Jackie did. He liked westerns and things like that. He wasn't a musical theater fan. Yes?
You read a lot about Jack. I was just wondering what your opinion would be. He wasn't the healthiest person
No.
at all. How long do you think he would have lived and I know this is really speculative, but if he had
Well, I'm an actor, not a doctor.
I'm impressed by your book.
Thank you.
I think you have that.
Boy, it's hard to say. Back in the day, Addison's disease is treatable but not curable. And he was prone to infections. Can you see up my skirt? No? I saw my mother leaning forward and I thought, oh crap. Anyway, I don't know if he would have made old poems. I can't see him living to be an old man, and he didn't think he would either. He was read his last rites several times in his lifetime. He had been a very sickly child. And one of the things that drew Jackie to him was that, he'd been this scrawny, sickly little kid, and his mother, Rose, used to go on these extended vacations and leave him all alone in his bedroom by himself, sick as a dog. And it was Joe Sr., it was his father who would go and read to this little boy for hours. But otherwise, he was sick, he was alone, he was weak. It's really heartbreaking. And I think sometimes, Jackie just looked at him and saw that scrawny kid that needed to be cared for, and thought, oh, I can save him, I can protect him. And that's something that women do. Yes?
I didn't notice until you started doing this. Acting. But I had no idea she was a heavy smoker. I don't know. Most people do that.
Yes. Most people don't know that she did smoke, even... They read, Neil. No, my dad reads a lot, constantly actually. And no, she was a heavy smoker, and Jack made it so that she was never photographed smoking. There are a few photographs of her smoking. She's pregnant, she's in a pink shift, she's on a boat, she's got a cigarette. But for the most part, they wouldn't allow that to be photographed. She was also incredibly protective of the children, and Jack knew that it was good for his political career for the children to be photographed in the White House, but Jackie was dead set against them being used as pawns. So he used to wait until she went out with her mother for the weekends, and then he'd invite all the photographers into the White House. And then he would blame the nanny. So poor Maud Shaw, got Jackie's wrath for something she never did. Yes?
I don't know if she's the right person or not, but was Khrushchev with her dog?
Yes. She not only charmed de Gaulle. She charmed Khrushchev. She was sitting next to him and he started to say, well, you know, we have more schools than the Ukraine. And she said, oh, Mr. Chairman, please don't bore me with statistics. Which he thought was hilarious. I don't know if I would have had the chutzpah to say that to Khrushchev, but she did. And then he was bragging about the space program. They were ahead at the time. And he was bragging about their dogs. And she said, well, why don't you send me one of her puppies? And he did. So one day in the White House, these two men in suits come in, and they've got this terrified dog, you know, the sickly little puppy that's shaking under their arms. And Jack says, what is this? And she said, oh my God, that's my fault. But they had dogs, they had horses. Jack was allergic to everything, but they had it anyway. Any other questions? Last chance. Don't go home regretting it. I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl. Of course I do. It's going to be the Eagles. Yes.
Did she ever speak to her theory of his death?
That's a great question. Did she ever speak to her theory of Jack's death? She really didn't care about the conspiracy theories. She said, you know, it won't bring him back. She said, you know, I hope it was a big conspiracy, because I hate to think of all he survived and he's being taken out by this grubby little communist. You know, she would have preferred it to be a grand thing. And she said it was so awful. At least, you know, he didn't even get to die for civil rights. If it had at least been about his civil rights stand or something, it would have been for something. But, so she wasn't terribly curious about it. And she suffered terribly after his passing. I mean, self-medicated with pills and vodka, not able to sleep. When she did sleep, she'd have horrifying nightmares and wake up screaming. She ruminated. What if I should have done something different? I should have realized it was a gunshot and not a car backfiring. I should have pulled him down sooner. I should have been looking to the right instead of the left. I mean, it breaks your heart. There was nothing she could have done. There was nothing anybody could have done, but she blamed herself for years. And even after she married Ari, she used to talk to her sister and just cry and say, I know I should be happy, but I just can't move on. And the American public was not terribly kind to her after that, because, you know, she married Ari and provoked such ire. But in America, they were saying nobody wanted to see her or look at her because she was still grieving, and America wanted to move on. They wanted to forget. But she was the symbol of pain, and they resented her for it. So the American public said, oh, she abandoned us when she married Ari, but I feel like it was the other way around. They wanted her to move on, they wanted her to cheer up and get over it, and of course she couldn't.
Didn't they take away Secret Service when she married him, which was shocking to me when I heard that?
It was, and Secret Service, well, what was shocking was she had them taken away from the children. She had that much faith in Aristotle's Onassis capabilities and private soldiers to keep her children safe. She had them pull back the Secret Service on the children after she married Ari, which just tells you, because everybody says she married him for the money. Yes and no. Lots of people have lots of money, but I think he made her and the children feel safe, and I think she was not in her right mind for a good 5 years after Jack's passing. I mean, I really don't think we can judge her too harshly. The paranoia and the fear, and of course, you know, some of you remember, you didn't know who had shot the president. Is this the start of World War III? Is what's going to happen? And she was very much feeling how tumultuous all that was. And so the appeal of going off on your own private Greek island and nobody bothering you and your children being safe and this magnanimous, wealthy man paying attention to you definitely has some appeal. It's just too bad he turned out to be a raging narcissist and a drunk. And a philanderer. So choose your husbands wisely. Well, my friends, we are officially 36 minutes over time. Oops.
Thank you.